She's like, hello, cute stuff. I'm like, cute? Okay, sure.
That's Joseph, not his real name. He's 25, works in the entertainment industry, and lives in South Asia. He doesn't want us to name his country. He's telling me about a couple of dates he went on 2 years ago with a woman who asked him out from Tinder. He was excited. They'd studied in the same city, and the woman initially seemed keen on him romantically.
On the second one, she was like, I'm not really looking to date, but then she's like calling me a friend and stuff. I'm like, okay, what's going on?
That date wasn't the only motivating factor, but Joseph openly says that at this time he started to develop grudges against women. He had social struggles, he had very few female friends, and those 2 dates highlighted how he was struggling to find genuine connections. He also says he grew tired of reading online about how men apparently had all the advantages in life. And at 5'9", he became increasingly frustrated by women seeking men taller than 6 foot on dating apps.
I had grudges. I felt like there was quite a lot of unfair advantages. I mean, like, for example, an average looking woman would have guys lining up for them, and that's gotten the standards up crazy.
Joseph says a college friend had been exposing him to what he called red pill thoughts, including ideas that women are only attracted to strong, rich men without any flaws. The term red pill is borrowed from the Matrix films, and an idea that people can choose a kind of enlightenment by swallowing the red pill or stay trapped in the Matrix with the blue one. Joseph was never fully sold on red pill ideas, particularly those about how men should present themselves as emotionless and masculine at all times. So how can men like Joseph, young, angry and lonely men, or more radical men, pull back from the extremist edge? I'm Jonathan Griffin and this is BBC Trending. In our Extreme series, we're exploring the ways in which social media is shaping behaviour and beliefs on the fringes of the internet, and in some cases, making it into the mainstream. In recent months, you may have heard of social media figures like Andrew Tate, or terms like the manosphere, a term that's used to describe a whole host of different anti-feminist misogynistic forums, groups and figures online. Today, we're looking at how men can deradicalise from misogynistic beliefs and asking if online spaces like Reddit can play a role in that process. In June last year, Joseph came across a message board on the Reddit website called Incel Exit. Incel is a term used by people who identify as being involuntarily celibate. You may have heard of the expression before, after several high-profile terrorist attacks, like the van attack in Toronto in 2018, which killed 11 people. We've also covered the group several times on BBC Trending, describing how users of incel forums often encourage other isolated young men to engage in homicide and suicide. Incels typically subscribe to a very pessimistic view of women as money-grabbing, promiscuous and manipulative. They also have very low opinions of themselves. Here's Josh Thorburn, a researcher at Monash Gender and Family Violence Prevention Centre in Melbourne, Australia, who's been studying these groups online.
Incels believe that they are exceptionally unattractive people themselves. They think that they don't even have a chance to ever have any success in dating.
Sometimes these frustrations with their lives lead to violent consequences. Josh has been looking at the potential benefits of 2 subreddits, Incel Exit and X Red Pill, for socially alienated young men. He proposes that these forums can provide alternative spaces for learning about the importance of consent and respectful relationships. At the time Joseph came across the Incel Exit message board, he didn't think of himself as an incel, or share all of their so-called black pill ideology. But after seeing some crossover with his thoughts, he started to give the subreddit more attention.
It was more about, finding some amount of sanity in myself and, not being completely angry all the time so that at least I'm not exhausted as hell.
It wasn't just not having a partner that was getting to Joseph. He's been on antidepressants for many years and describes this particular period of his life as lonely and feeling like he'd been left behind by his peers.
I tried everything. Why not try this as well? Because for starters, therapy is a luxury in my country.
Initially, Joseph just lurks quietly in the background, reading comments from incels trying to rebalance their psyche. Then, after a few weeks, he started to ask questions of his own and source ideas of places to go to socialise to address his loneliness. While he hasn't found dating happiness yet, Joseph says the subreddit has helped him improve his mental health and change his perspectives about dating. He now believes that in order for people to find meaningful connections, they need to socialise more in the real world, which is where he spent a lot of his time after taking on dance classes.
I started with salsa classes, and from there I found out the concept of socials. I just ended up meeting people on a more regular basis, and that is something I missed a lot in college. I mean, I'm in a good mood more often. I mean, you get a dance move right, and it's like, hey, it worked.
Dancing and socialising have built up Joseph's confidence, and he started to see the value in building platonic connections with women too.
I wonder if you can imagine a life where you didn't go on the Incel Exit subreddit. What would have happened to you? Where would you be now, and what attitudes would you have now?
I think my temper and mental health would have been much worse. Nowadays, since I'm in a better headspace, I have tried to help people as well. Why not? There are some people who have been in a worse state than me as well. So I think it's going to continue to have an impact on my mental health and otherwise.
Incel Exit may have had a positive influence on Joseph's life and some other posters I contacted, but it doesn't work for everyone. In 2021, Jake Davison was posting on the forum. He berated other forum posters looking for help, adding that incels who get girlfriends will leave the incel community and never post again. He also slammed the idea of therapy being useful for men, writing that his own scars and damage would follow him forever. Reddit suspended Davison's account on the 11th of August. A day later, he killed 5 people in Plymouth in the UK, including his own mother and a 3-year-old girl. At the time, the shootings made headlines around the world and placed a renewed focus on incels in the media. Joseph in South Asia wasn't using Incel Exit when the attack happened. I asked him about who uses the forum today and how the moderation of content on there works.
I think most of them just seem to be really, really depressed from what I could see. Depressed, exhausted, maybe losing hope per se. I mean, a lot of people would show up with complete hate, treating it like an echo chamber, but the moderators would take it down really fast. The mods are very strict. Like you say something which is misogynistic, they are going to take it down.
Incels, of course, make up a small portion of the wider manosphere, that loose collective of misogynistic groups.
No, I wasn't trusting at all when I was consuming Red Pill content.
That's Jack, not his real name. He's a professor from the Middle East, currently living in California. He's been able to have relationships with women. What Jack has in common with Joseph is that at one time he struggled with dating, and that led him to consume a diet of so-called red pill content. Red pill followers often share ways to manipulate women psychologically in order to enjoy dating success. In Jack's case, he sought out material from pickup artists.
Probably I started when I was like 21, I would say. And yeah, I consumed it maybe for a few years at first. And then I didn't really consume it at all. And then I had a bad experience with a relationship when I was 29. And then after that, yeah, I consumed it for another year, I guess.
Overall, Jack says he regrets consuming red pill content, but his position is somewhat nuanced. He credits the idea of self-improving your looks, central to red pill ideology, with him losing a significant amount of weight, which he says has improved his life. On the other hand, consuming red pill content has left a mark on his psyche.
You need to be good looking, you need to have status, money, you need to be tall. When you understand life through this lens, then, you always think that, okay, who's she go for next?
Jack says red pill content made him cynical about the intentions of the women in his life. He began to assume that if a woman he was speaking to was a little colder than usual, she was dating someone else, even if there was no evidence for this at all.
I'm in like a lost serious relationship. I couldn't trust her at all, and it's a huge burden on me, like psychologically.
He also says consuming red pill content hampered his ability to initiate interactions with women because he was worried that looking too keen would make him look needy and reduce his, quote, sexual marketplace value. These thoughts started to build up until 2 years ago, Jack turned to another subreddit for help, entitled X Red Pill.
When you look at this community, you see that, okay, these are the people who walked through the same path I did, and now they are able to see some of the shortcomings of what I'm having right now. So I think it gives me some sort of comfort.
Jack now imagines a different pathway from when he was unsuccessful with women to now. He says he'd like to have found a way to work on improving himself without red pill theory, which creates paranoia about women's intentions. I asked Jack what he'd learned from his time on the X Red Pill subreddit.
I now believe that maybe I can have like a more trusting relationship, let's say. I mean, I can give it a shot, right? Right now, I don't have a relationship, although I'm seeing someone which can get serious. So I don't know how I will think or how I will behave in like 6 months from now.
Jack says he hopes he has left some of the red pill concepts behind and he hasn't consumed any red pill content for at least 1.5 to 2 years. And yet, what he did pick up continues to remain deeply ingrained in his thinking. Only time will tell whether what he's learning on the X Red Pill forum will be able to counter those original ideas. I contacted the moderators of the X Red Pill subreddit to talk about the experiences people have using the forum, but they didn't get back to me. So I asked Jack how helpful the forum is.
Not super helpful, but at least, it's something. It's better than nothing, because otherwise it becomes like an echo chamber in my mind, because I don't really talk to anyone about these things. Or I don't even have a lot of people around me that are familiar with those things in the first place. So it's helpful, but I wouldn't say it's like life-changing or anything.
That said, Josh Thorburn, who's researched both the Incel Exit and X Red Pill subreddits for his PhD, says he's encouraged by many of the interactions he sees on the subreddits.
The fact that these forums are free to access, very easily accessible, I want more people to know about them, because I believe that these forums can hopefully help a lot of adolescents and young men in particular who are really struggling with things like self-esteem, things like dealing with solitude, dealing with rejection, dealing with loneliness. Look, I think there are certainly advantages to kind of these online approaches like Incel Exit, X Red Pill, and others. In various parts of the world, sex education is very limited, or it might be very brief, or it might not address issues like consent or the need for respect in relationships, or how to kind of go about that.
Subreddits are providing one way to combat distorted views. But as we've heard, they do not act as a silver bullet. So what other ways are people challenging misogynistic ideas? A high-profile femicide in 2016 in South Korea led to significant focus on gender conflict in that nation.
오픈 카톡방을 개설한 이유도 청년들이 서로 대화를 나누는 게 그러한 대학
The reason I decided to create the open group chat was that I believe it will be helpful for young people to engage in conversations and discover alternative forms of masculinity.
That's Han Lee, a full-time gender equality activist who runs an organisation in South Korea called Feminism with Men. He told Loonie Park, who works as a producer on the BBC's Burning Sun podcast, that what initially started as a book club in response to the murder in Gangnam had since morphed into a group that takes part in real-world demonstrations and rallies. They now have over 3,000 followers on Facebook, several hundred on Instagram, and an open group chat on messaging app Kakao Talk. They also have a 5-part dating school that the organisers say helps men make friends with women and have more equal relationships. Osam, that's not his real name, is single, in his early 30s, and works for a non-profit organisation.
In
my previous dating experiences, I felt a strong desire to establish a sense of dominance or superiority within the relationship rather than engaging in emotional connection with my partner.
He has a strained relationship with his father, and says growing up in the Korean countryside, he learned that the only way to deal with situations was either by controlling the other person or resorting to violence. He remembers boys at school being bullied for being effeminate and says that rigid expectations of masculinity continued when he did his military training, which is mandatory for all South Korean men without an incredibly difficult to obtain exemption.
군대 안에서 적응을 잘하기 위해서는 남성들 특히나
You need to maintain a very positive attitude towards prostitution. Even if I personally choose not to engage in paying for prostitution, if the person next to me holds a higher rank than me, when the topic of prostitution comes up, if someone does display a somewhat negative attitude, there's a high likelihood of facing discrimination, even within the military environment.
In order to combat what he refers to as ingrained habits and problematic behaviours, Osam told my colleague Loonie Park that he's been taking part in the 5-part workshop run by Feminism with Men called the New Man Dating School. The workshops focus on areas such as dating, sex, consent and refusal, equal relationships and caregiving. So, do they make any difference?
왜 이렇게 불안하게 삶을 살아야 되는 거에 대해서 계속 조금 고민을 가지고
I couldn't help but
있었던 것 같아요.
wonder why I had to live my life in such constant anxiety. It felt like I had to conceal my true feelings, unable to express them openly. And the only way to deal with situations was either by trying to control the other person or resorting to violence. It was a troubling and exhausting way to navigate through life.
지금 총 5회차 중에서 4회차까지 참여를 했는데요.
I have participated up to the 4th session out of a total of 5 sessions. Throughout the program, my pre-existing thoughts and perspectives have shifted to some extent. And at the same time, I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge so far.
There are a number of different ways to de-radicalise. Reddit is just one of the starting points. I've spoken to several people from the Incel exit and ex-Red Pill communities making this programme, and many of them say the same thing. These forums are not a silver bullet, but they are useful, answering their questions and making them feel less isolated. Not everything can be done on screen, and the real world still has an important role to play in curbing extremist thoughts, be that via socialising or sex education workshops. But what subreddits can provide is useful information and support from peers for young men around the world, particularly those unable to access therapy or face-to-face help. Potentially, this provides another avenue on the often non-linear path towards de-radicalisation. We've talked a lot about mental health issues. If you're going through depression, there are details of organisations offering information and support with mental health available at bbc.co.uk/actionline. There are, of course, local services all around the world who specialise in mental health. So if you feel particularly affected by this programme, ask your doctor or search online for local providers. That's it this week for the BBC Trending podcast. I'm Jonathan Griffin. Thanks to Loonie Park and our editor, Flora Carmichael. If you want to message Trending with your thoughts on this or any of our other episodes, then you can email me. It's jonathan.griffin@bbc.co.uk. Thank you for listening.